Good morning. It's Friday and it's been a whole long week. It's Jill and Deb with Humor, Grace, and Grief and the Friday Grief Chat. I'm Jill. That's Deb. Deb, can you hear us? Deb seems frozen right now. I'll go ahead with the intro. Deb has. Are you here?
Can you see me?
Now we can see. You are frozen. There's Deb. And
Yeah,
she's had a week of it.
yeah.
And we need to talk about it because when we lose people who are important, we need to talk about them. And Deb has. You want to take it?
Yeah. I do. Uh, Jill and I are always very real, honest, upfront, and here we are. Some days you've seen us in a panic after, and we're just that's what we want to be with you, because our listening audience, because
Mm-hmm.
you we want that for you, and we can't want things for you unless we're willing to be here now in the moment. And last night, one of my beloved camp counselors, and let me back up, that for 23 years or so, I was a camp clown at something called FCAN, which stood for Family and Children AIDS Network. We were one of the very first in the state of Illinois to invite the whole family to a weekend of camp. So it would be both learning and relaxation and fun for people who were infected and affected by HIV and AIDS. And this was back in the mid 90s that we had started. And my friend H and I, we were, and the director of the camp, we were the first and the last people. We did all the camps. The only camp that I couldn't do was my mother had died that month, and I just wasn't able to put myself in a clown role. Um, Many of the volunteers gave up money, pay, weekends to do this at least 2 times a year, sometimes three. And our as camp counselors, I was the camp clown, but as the camp counselors, they had different age groups that they were responsible for. And my friend, BJ and Shar, both had early teens. Sometimes they had late teens, but nonetheless, teen is in that camp area, and God love them. By the time they saw me, they were always respectful. Remember, I'm Daisy the clown.
Right. Can't be mean to a clown.
You can't be disrespectful to the clown.
You can be afraid of them, but you can't be disrespectful.
Exactly. But nobody at camp, only in the very beginning, sometimes people were afraid. But when they heard that I used a normal voice, I had what was called a ghost makeup, which is skin tone makeup for the most part. And they loved me. There wasn't anybody that was really afraid of me at this camp. And the bottom line, probably about 6 weeks ago, my friend Shar broke her arm, which led to one disaster after another. And yesterday, I was not expecting this. Her wife called me and said that Shar had died. And she asked me to officiate the funeral. because she was actually, kicked out of XYZ church. You know,
I know.
and So I waited till she put things on Facebook and until she told me I could contact some people. And this morning, tell your loved ones you love them today because tomorrow isn't promised. And I got 2 messages from both. She became a camp counselor. After age 18, they age out of camp and they become a counselor. So from 2 of the major players, they both said, Daisy, I love you. And another camp counselor is probably going to drive down there with me. It's about 3 hours away. And they will go with me to the funeral and probably drive because you might not have known last Friday, right after our broadcast, I tested positive for COVID. I'm negative now. Like I said, it's been a week.
It has been. I'm glad you're negative by now because lots of people aren't.
I know. And then my husband tested positive. But I started thinking about all the services I've done for my friends at camp. And when I signed up to be a clown, I never expected to be an officiant at both weddings and funerals. Only one of them, one of the moms whose son died of AIDS, she asked me to show up like a clown. The funeral home wasn't happy and they wanted to contain me because there was another funeral going on. And when I walked into the funeral home back then, into the room, you know how people set up pictures? They had their son from when he was little for about 8 years with Daisy the Clown. Just, and thank God I have waterproof makeup.
Right?
I can't even tell you. And then one of the things that always very important at the beginning of camp was I gave out clown kisses, little heart-shaped stickers on every single camper's cheek. It was in the very beginning of camp. Shar came about 5 years into camp, but at the very beginning, maybe we had 25 people. By the end of camp, we probably had 150 to 175 people. And Shar would always say, Daisy, where's my kiss? Immediately. And I always gave out, and to show you how much this camp was put together by so many people, there was a woman in this town, in St. Joseph, whose son lived in New Orleans and would always pick the beads up after Mardi Gras. So every year I got at least 25 to 50 for years.
Wow.
25 to 50 pounds of pounds. Big
I thought you were going to say strings.
No, pounds of Mardi Gras beads. So everybody got beads. They would line up right after the bus came because we would try to meet in central locations. Like and Bloomington and Springfield were usually the central locations of the state. So Shar would want, I want purple. Days, what are you doing? I need purple beads. And, you know, truly nothing is funnier than having adults fight over the color beads they had.
Right?
Right. And so I would always make sure, and then the next day they would sleep with these little hearts. And the next day, if they lost them,
They needed a new one.
they needed a new one. And the adults knew I would always whisper adult humor in their ear. And that was another reason why the counselors loved me. And Char was a counselor. And then her wife became a counselor. And anyway, so I was thinking all about this and about camp. And something I learned from another bereavement facilitator that used to be at the camp for the kids was what represents grief. And so this box right here was instrumental, and like I said, it was painted by
stunning.
It is. Let's see if I can pull back. Yeah, so you can see
for those who are listening instead of watching.
Yes.
Deb's going to take some pictures of this and put it on our Facebook page for Humor, Grace, and Grief. But it's a beautiful box that is painted in just the most stunning way, and it's got a star and moon theme on the top, and then lavender bricks on the sides, and it's all hand painted. It's stunning.
It's stunning. And one of our volunteers, well, actually, he didn't volunteer as much as his husband and another best friend. And he himself draws cartoons and things like that. That's not his main job, but that's something he's always enjoyed doing. So he painted this box to look like there's clouds, and then I think this looks like ocean.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, the flow of this box is amazing. And every camp, after we did, like, people would sign in and get beads and get heart kisses and hug and hug and hug and hug. We would start with this box, and this is what I started maybe about, again, 7 years into the camp, 5, I can't remember. But we started with an open box, and during the opening ceremony, and I look, and there's even leftover stuff in here from I can't tell you how many years ago. And the open box represented our hearts for the weekend. And in it, I usually had tons of giveaways, maybe more beads, but usually a theme. Like, we always had a theme to camp. Sometimes it was being part of the world. Sometimes it was being part of the United States. Sometimes it was being love. Sometimes, so there was a theme every single camp. And I would find goodies that represented that theme. And then to end at the closing ceremonies, we left the box open. Nobody ever stole the box. Other things got stolen, but nobody ever stole the box. I could leave it anywhere in the hotel or at our campgrounds because it was one or the other. And people at the end of camp, or maybe during camp, would leave messages in here. Like, I love camp, I love Daisy, I love Char, and to have all these teens really respect adults And, Shar took no grief from anyone. She was an OB nurse. And though
Oh,
she never said this, she could bring you into this world and she truly could take you out.
yeah, absolutely. You don't mess with
Right?
those people.
Don't mess with an OR nurse. I'm not OR, a
OB nurse.
OB nurse. Thank
She
you.
can tell that baby to come right out. No, they don't. You don't mess with them.
Oh no, no,
Mm-mm.
no, no. And BJ was this calm, quiet. I mean, she kept all her anxiety inside, quiet but mighty woman. And BJ and I, you know, the clown would get frustrated sometimes, and I would just be like this, talking to BJ and going, oh, and the explicatives that would come out of my mouth with a smile on my face. And BJ, it was always listening. And then Shar would come up to me and go, Daisy, what's the matter? And I'd go, and she goes, yes, smile for the children.
That's right.
So camp would end with me closing the box, that our hearts might be closed now, but they will open again. And as I'm thinking about how I've done this at one other funeral, because they asked me to speak, it was that young man that died of AIDS. I have done other funerals and spoken at other funerals, not as a clown, but I always found a way to close the box, not this physical box, but when I do a funeral for a camp person, I integrate that somehow. And I'm telling you, Jill, this is going to be a rough one for me.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all rough because maybe, I don't know, 6 years ago, I did a wedding of two of our friends, and they were best friends with Shar and BJ. And I did the wedding for, I'll just say, Roger and Donnie. And 9 months later, Roger, the much younger of the two, died of an aneurysm. And so, once again, we show up for our camp friends, our family. This is my family.
Mm-hmm.
And, in my way, I got up there in front of everybody and got everybody involved, because that's what the camp clown does. They gather everybody. They ask questions. I did, so that we could all sort of close the box for Roger. And I think about who's listening here and the things we use and in your therapy to represent an opening of our heart and a closing of our heart.
Right.
Because it has to have a not permanent lock.
Mm-hmm. There has to be space.
There has to be space.
Mm-hmm.
And yet your hearts are hurting and they close down for now. How can you open them up? I mean, every physical heart goes lub dub, lub dub, lub dub, every physical heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so our emotional heart
Mm-hmm.
does that also. And
there has to be room for that and protection for that.
exactly. And something else to our listening audience, that so I just, it felt like a gut punch after I talked with BJ.
Mm-hmm.
And my yoga teacher and dear friend Trudy she talked to me after meditation and just let me go blah, blah, that's what you have to do, right?
I want everyone to hear how many different places Deb has support built into her life
Yes.
and how many ways she has people around her. And I want that to be a model for our listeners about how you can, even when life is not terrific, you can create that kind of group around you, that wreath of care and support.
Well, this camp is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 years ago, we actually met. 2 Junes ago, we decided, let's have a reunion and let's just all show up at the same hotel that is in crap shape, that we've always been at.
Uh-huh.
And then 2 years before that, what did we do? I said, let's have a party at my place. And so I had tents in our backyard all over.
That's awesome.
And people came down for the day. People kicked in for food. I was like, like people stayed in the house. I didn't care. It's camp.
That's what my mom was channeling when she was telling me that she had people in tents in the backyard. She was channeling Deb.
Well, yes. And I mean, we had tons of fire going. I mean, it was perfect weather like this outside right now.
Just for the record, Deb has a stream in her backyard. Like she's got the woods.
I do have the woods in the backyard. On the other side of the stream's only 15 feet across, maybe something like that. And they're steep going down. You can't really go in there.
River in California?
What?
That's a river in California.
It's a creek here. And actually, technically speaking, it's the Salt Fork drainage ditch. It comes down from the Salt Fork River. Anyway, on the other side are cows. So we just love, just even for a little bit, being together and sharing space. And so when another camper died, I got contacted, and this was last year, and he had been at the camp maybe for 3 or 4 years. I contacted a bunch of people and say, please send me your memories. And I pulled them together and I sent them on to be read at the funeral in Minnesota. And that's what I will most likely do now for those that can't go downstate. It's 6 hours, 7 hours from up north. It's 3.5 hours from me. And anyway.
I'm glad you get to go and be present and be part of it and be with everyone.
Thank you. And I just want to say to our listeners that I started to say, just when I was starting to feel sad again, I went out and got the mail. And there is a card, 2 cards. One's a birthday card from July. And then there's another card from Jill and Stacy. They're both the birthday card and this other card that I'm like, what? And in it was, I'll show the pins some other day, but the reason why we call this humor, grief and grace is because even the littlest smile helps change your hormones for just a second.
Yes, it does.
And, my shock and sadness, mostly sadness today, got a lift by seeing Jill and Stacy's cards, and the little pin that they sent me that I will wear proudly.
Which is from Paulsbo, Washington.
Oh my God. They see this stuff and they go,
It's
thinking of
Deb.
you.
Mhm.
Yes, yes. Jill, in your practice, what are some objects that you encourage people to use that's much like the box to represent their heart? What are things that you have talked about in your travels?
We talk in the office. Um, I with little people. We when I did a lot of kid work with grief, we did bead jewelry where the beads were selected to represent different parts of the person who died. So then they could wear that. We would color pictures together, and then I would laminate them, and then we would clip them together into a memory book that they could hold on to, which was important because when kids are little, the memories are so different. And as they age, they lose some of that. And so they would color the picture, and then I would write some of their thoughts on the back. And I've had some of them come back recently because I've been doing this a while, and they're adults, and they didn't remember those things until they saw my notes on the back. And so those little laminated books have given them a place to hold on to that person
Mm-hmm.
in a way that, as adults, we do have the memory boxes. And in fact, I used to stock the office with little wooden boxes from like Michael's. We still
Yeah,
have some knocking around because that
that's,
way they can be decorated even by adults,
that's right.
right?
That's right.
I do a lot of body work with folks and talk about where inside our bodies we hold on to things. You know me, beach, water. Anything water for me is healing and soothing and centering. And so I have lots of beach stuff, most of it artwork or shells that have come from local artists where I've been. And so we'll get a shell out and we'll put thoughts into the shell and then send someone home to do that. Um, I do a lot with gardening and with the sad thoughts. Go home and plant something that will grow and nurture you.
Mm-hmm.
I have been known when I know staff are struggling to stop at the nursery and get the makings for a tomato and what's the tomato and basil salads. And so I'll get a
Mm-hmm.
little tomato plant and with a little cherry tomato and a little basil plant and a little bag of dirt and a little container for it. And I don't plant it, I bring it in with
Mm-hmm.
instructions for them to take that home and play in the dirt and
Mm-hmm.
to let that stuff go. And I don't use the word stuff, right?
Yes.
There's so many different ways you can do that. As you were talking about camp, and I was writing notes for in the show notes, um, I was thinking about all the different ways that people, show their love for people, like you do with pins. Deb is known for little gifts. Deb shows love through well thought out, not necessarily expensive, but meaningful gifts. She shows up in
Like you guys.
Wisconsin with them every time. And I've learned a lot. My dad used to be a rock hound. And so we would spend our summers and our time away from school out in the desert, wherever. I've been in every slot canyon in the western United States, I think. And then he would pick up a dirty old rock and he could see through it and know it was going to be gorgeous. And then later that rock would be cut and then cut again and polished, and he'd make a setting for it. And it became a gift of love to show his care for someone, whether it was a secretary at the office or someone at church. Those necklaces show up. When I was at my mom's funeral, probably 20 people were wearing hairy necklaces because that's how he showed his love, right?
Right.
All the different ways that we have. So I try to match it to people because some people don't want to write. I like journaling because that's what therapists
Mm-hmm.
do. Most people don't want to journal. So I have them write just short thoughts, and then we write them
Safety.
down and put them in a safe spot.
That's right. That's
Right?
right. Yeah, I'm not a journaler. I do encourage my clients to,
Right. Mm-hmm.
uh, but to find something that represents, like my friend who had cancer, who has cancer, and I was in Oregon this last time. Hang on, I'm just gonna cough for a second.
Because COVID, people wear your masks. Sorry.
Yeah. So I walked on the beach and thought of her and picked up shells that had holes. And then I found at a bead store, it's called sea glass beads. So I picked her favorite colors and I strung this together, put it in a little bag, and said, "This is for you, not to wear, but to have, to hold."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking what to put in the box for the funeral. And how to remember Shar.
Mm-hmm.
Shar and BJ, God love them, because they made real coffee every morning we were in the hotel.
Wow.
We made coffee also, but they had the big pot. And we'd all bring them coffee to use to feed all of us.
Right.
You know, you needed coffee just to go get breakfast coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Breakfast coffee is not the same as what's in the coffee pot. And Shar, wow, it's
How do you remember a life so well lived and so with so much
exactly.
love and so much impact, other than to have others bring things that represent her impact so that her wife and all of you can celebrate that?
She has a daughter and a
Mhm.
granddaughter, and that granddaughter, oh my God. You know, these guys made fun of me. I just want you to know, and then I'll be quiet. That when I had my grandkids in the car and I'd show up at camp, I said, "You're not going to believe this. This is crazy." The grandkids, they wouldn't stop talking. And so I pulled a Saturday Night Live thing and I said, "Okay, everybody, go into the cone of silence." You need to be in the cone of silence. And my grandkids did this. Bubby, 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 bubby. Every grandkid likes to repeat itself. And so I had told them that story and they're just cracking up because it went from Bobby, 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 Bobby to Bubby, 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 Bubby in that cone of silence. And so the next year at camp or whatever, they, especially BJ and Shar, they went Bubby, 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 Bubby in the big circle, right? And I had always hoped she would experience a grandchild who could do that. And she did. And Shar's grandkid and BJ, just, it means everything to them. And so I'm glad this child came into the world to experience her grandma.
Absolutely.
And
And we'll carry
oh,
some of grandma with her.
and will always carry some grandma with her. Anyway, thanks for letting me talk and just,
Thanks for sharing Shar with all of us
yeah,
and the thoughts. And I really hope everyone after today will take a moment and a breath and really think about how it is that you are impacting the people around you and what you might want to do to make sure that they know how you feel. because we're not guaranteed tomorrow. We all know that. When you had COVID last week, I was seriously concerned. Stace and I had some conversations on the patio. And, we just, none of us have that. We're going to. So,
Yeah.
how do we make sure that we have created that wreath of love and care around those who matter to us, so that goes with them after we aren't? Because
That's
Shar certainly did that.
She did. And for those that went before Shar, they're always in my heart. My heart is overflowing right now. So thank you, Jill. Thanks to our listening audience. I'm sad, but you made it a little less sad for a little bit here. So thank
I'm
you.
so glad. Everybody, arms around Deb today. Arms around Deb. Steve says, thanks for sharing your very special friend with us, Deb. My heart is aching for you. Be well and we'll keep you in my thoughts, love.
Thank you.
Hugs to all. We'll see you
Hugs
next
to
week.
all. We'll see you next week.